afternoon. Thanks for coming. We're going to talk today about wilderness medicine research and how to involve learners, so students, residents, and fellows in that process. None of us have anything to disclose. So our objectives today are going to talk about the risks and benefits to incorporating learners into research, both from a faculty perspective and from the learner perspective, some funding opportunities that are specific to learners that are available, as well as how to connect and find learners, if you're faculty, to be a part of your projects, as well as projects for those learners. And then afterwards, we'll have a question and answer session for a few minutes, and then we'll network. So any learners can talk to any faculty, and faculty can try to connect with learners, and we'll see if we can make some research projects happen. So to start things off, Stuart Harris, who's is going to come up and talk to us about the faculty perspective of risks and benefits and incorporating learners into your research.
Thank you all. Here, I may close the door real quickly on our little gathering. So this will be completely informal. If you have any questions at any point, please feel free to interrupt and ask. But just going to be going through some of our experiences as researchers and as teachers of wilderness medicine. These two quotes, I think, kind of sum things up a lot for me. So Warren Zapal is a former chair of anesthesia at MGH, is a great mentor in my life. And while he was out running a major clinical department at a major medical center, he was also disappearing to Antarctica for about a month every year on some NSF-funded research, looking at the dive response of Liddell seals, figuring out how that all works. And he said to me in February of last year, he said, "Stuart, go out and do weird and wonderful things, and people will love you." And usually that would be a whack job statement, but this is one of the most accomplished scientists I know in the world. And his just enthusiasm and his ability to kind of see outside of the box that is most medicine, academic medical centers, is, I think, heartening. And the other is Aldo Leopold. In this part of the world, everybody ought to know who Aldo Leopold is. Was a founder of a lot of the environmental movement. But his quotation, "To those devoid of imagination, a blank space in the map is a useless waste. To others, the most important part." And I think that ability to see where right now people aren't seeing, but there's a blank spot, and it's a spot that needs to be filled, and it's one that we entirely have the capacity to do. So I've started and run the Wilderness Medicine Fellowship at MGH, and so I've had an extraordinarily blessed career just in the people I've gotten a chance to work with, to play with. And the way I think we've gone about it is using these kind of four thoughts to advance patient care. So number one is in our fellowships and in our residents' interactions, we want to produce high-quality physician scientists who are doing cool research, who are filling in those blank spots on the map because it's cool, it's fun, it's curious. That's what human beings do. Training clinical leaders is something that it probably should have come first as far as what's important to me. If you're not a good doctor, I like you very much, but you don't necessarily have as important a role as a pure researcher. I think the bedside is where our focus is and what I take most pride in. Creating medical educators is something that just to see SAEM, I was saying yesterday that this is a 10th iteration of SAEM with a wilderness medicine presence, and just to see the explosive growth of wilderness medicine within SAEM in that 10 years since Phoenix has been really heartening. And then lastly, that shifting the curve of medicine. There are a number of things that are big picture things that I think the ability to get outside of the hospital, to get outside of a lot of the things that if you keep your head down in the ED, it's very easy to get myopic. And so to think about bigger things is something that wilderness medicine is kind of blessed with. So I'm going to go through kind of the risks and the benefits of running a fellowship. And starting off with the risks, because they're real, and there's something that before you enter into starting a fellowship or running a fellowship or decide to continue running a fellowship, there are things you want to think about. First off, it's a tremendous investment of time. Your time as a busy faculty member, it divides your attention between a bunch of other things that you could otherwise be working on professionally, much less at home. It adds a layer of complexity and potential frustration as far as your ability to focus on some research projects, some clinical projects, and I think that is something I've seen friends who start fellowships. Sometimes it's easy to under-recognize that. The personal risk is something I don't know that I've fully appreciated, but as I get older, I'm seeing that when you choose a fellow and have them come into your shop, it's a lifelong commitment, so you need to do so thoughtfully and make sure that everybody is on the same page. Everybody gets married very happily, but you always want to be thinking, it's like, well, if things didn't work out, you know, is this something I'd be proud of? And to be able to answer yes before you get into it. Reputational risk is a part of that. The financial burden is something, it's been really interesting. We're now 5 reviews into out of the 19 fellowships in the country, reviews by SAEM of different fellowships, and to see how the different economic models work is pretty interesting. Some people, it's certainly nothing in academic medicine is a cash cow, but it's, they've got a very successful financial model. Other people, it's much more bootstrap. I think for most of us it's bootstrap, but making sure the numbers are at least ones that you, your chair, your institution can easily endorse are something to think about. Administrative burdens probably ought to be emboldened there. Most of us in academic emergency medicine or wilderness medicine either don't have a deep and abiding love for administrative tasks. And it's something that comes with the territory, and you learn to get hopefully facile with it. I joke that my job is to be St. George of the administrative dragons. It's like, my job is to I'll take care of the paperwork, you go out and you learn, you have fun, and learn things, and that's what it's about. But if you're starting a fellowship, it's something you damn well better be aware of, because it's something you're going to be doing some of. And then again, something that as I have gotten older to more fully appreciate, the physical risk to fellows. When Dr. Phillips over here was in Nepal and an earthquake came through and killed a lot of people, and in other places we've had fellows, the physical risk is something you need to take seriously, and you feel a tremendous responsibility for these people. And there are not many times in the emergency department, I mean, there's a lot of violence in the ED that is, in the grand scheme of things, is pretty damn controlled, where if you're sending people into undeveloped areas around the world, you need to be comfortable with the fact that no, you're going to be talking to their parents and you're going to be talking to their spouses, and that you need to be pretty comfortable with that. So just give it some thought. On the benefit side, they vastly outweigh any kind of limitations. Certainly the opportunity to engage for a lifetime with people you get to play with and call fellows briefly and then colleagues for the rest of your life is it's a real gift. The ability to give people tools that they come to you with extraordinary visions and powers and talents, and a large part of my job, and I think of a good fellowship director, is just to get the hell out of the way, to give them whatever you can as far as tools, and then let their passion run. And part of that is sketching in the blank portions of the map. Aldo's kind of thrust towards, these are cool things. These are extraordinary opportunities we have. Go out and to embrace that is a real charge. A little Christmas party love. On the more nuts and bolts sides of things, there can be some academic productivity to it. I think to go into it expecting that in isolation is a little maybe naive, but it's something that if you're thoughtful, everybody can benefit from working together. As my parents have gotten older and I'm getting older, and you see your kids coming along, the idea of creating a generation of doctors that you're going to be damn happy when you look up and see them, when your time comes. It's a selfish end, but it's a real one and a good one. And I think it's a large part of what draws all of us to academic emergency medicine. And then there's some real things as far as climate change, as far as the humanistic aspects of medicine that can be addressed, that we're addressing and creating durable change. So it's important. I think I've already said all the above, except for the bottom. If I haven't made clear that it's just a tremendous amount of fun, then that's something that is, I've not communicated very well, but that's kind of key. And with that, we'll pass things off to Dr. Gupta.
Thank you. Guys, with the audience, who here is a student? And residents? Any faculty members? All right, good. We got the full gamut. So students, please don't take anything I say in the next few minutes that negatively. So we're just going to be talking about nuts and bolts a little bit of the learner perspective and some of the characteristics of training, and we'll put a particular slant in wilderness medicine in here. So, I mean, obviously, your goals as a student and as a resident even is basically knowledge acquisition, learning new skills, new information. Schedules are really variable, vary shifts by month to month, by shift to shift, day to day, week to week. So kind of consistency, whether you're in medical school or as a resident, is really variable. And competing interests, right? Everything. I remember going back to third year of med school. I was going to be a psychiatrist one month. I was going to be a surgeon the next month. I was never going to be an internist, even though I did do that for a year. But things like that. So your interests change as you have more experiences in fields. And this is very true of as we talk about wilderness medicine. So I go to now, I grew up in an era where we didn't have the internet. Right, so for me to learn about the world, I had the World Book Encyclopedia. You guys are probably going, what are you talking about? What's this? But you guys have grown up globally, right? Interconnected. The world is not anything novel, and you want to get out there. And this is, I think, what makes wilderness medicine really appealing to people in training. But there's an inherent conflict there, as Stuart just mentioned, is that your primary goal is to become a good physician first, a good clinician, before you can go out and learn these particular skills. So as you are kind of conflicted with your passion versus kind of the nuts and bolts of learning medicine first. So, and this kind of ties into passion versus pragmatism. You have to be able to kind of reconcile, both of those feelings within you. And this can really impair educational goals. So I'll give you an example. It's not really has to do with wilderness medicine, but I had this really great EM resident, chief resident. Medicine was his second career. He was a graphic designer, and this was when the Surviving Sepsis campaign was a big deal. He made all these beautiful posters for our department, really owned this project, owned the research behind it. It was great. He did a great job of this. And guess what? He failed his step one of the boards. Right? So as you're talking about passion and being pragmatic, you got to remember that your value is being a well-trained and demonstrably well-trained EM physician first. Projects can be time-consuming. As we're talking about wilderness medicine, you think about the research, there's opportunity for bench research, there's local research, but there's also research that might be done at altitude. There's research that might have to be done out of country. There might be research that has to be done on the river. So as we talk about these projects, they can extend longitudinally over time and use a lot of logistical resources. You have to think about, it's not as simple as, I can just go in next door at the medical school or at the basic science building and get this work done. This work might actually involve so much longitudinal time that won't fit into your practical schedule. Mentoring is another thing, as we know. I mean, kind of the quid pro quo is I'm going to work for you as a trainee, and I want mentoring behind. And unfortunately, not all faculty know really how to mentor that well. So really, and you may not really have that much diversity in who you can choose to be your mentor if you're looking at a particular field of study. So something to always consider, and lack of payoff. And we always want to be practical. You're not in a position of power as a student or as a trainee, and you might put so much effort and so much time into a project and not end up actually getting your name on the publication. And that's something to always consider in the end as you talk about long-standing currency that goes along with time and effort that you're going to put into research. But the benefits outweigh the risk. I mean, this is how we develop lifelong learners. This is what SAEM is a little bit all about, right? It promotes curiosity. It takes you to a place where you didn't think you had an interest in research or skills in research, and you develop. And the fact that you can kind of integrate this into a passion for being out of hospital in remote settings is really unique. I mean, you're going to develop research skills, which is another technical skill that you could take even outside of wilderness medicine to everything you do in medicine as you're evaluating research work. This gives you a niche area. Trust me, if you ever go anywhere and go, look, I conducted a research project on the Colorado River in this time, it's going to be a topic of conversation that most people can't match. The opportunity to collaborate and to find other mentors in a field that's actually kind of small, where everyone knows each other, I think is fairly unique in our specialty as well. So a lot of upside to thinking about this. So as we think about this, funding always comes in. Funding is tough anywhere. Funding in wilderness medicine, if any of you have had the opportunity to go to someone and go, hey, I'm interested in wilderness medicine and this is what I do, unfortunately, still to this date, it probably used to be 10 out of 10 times. Now it's probably more like 8 out of 10 going, wilderness medicine, what is that? So just the understanding and knowledge of what that means is still kind of in its infancy to some extent, despite having 19 fellowships across the country. So let's talk a little bit about opportunities for grant funding. This is opportunities at any level. So there is a professional society in wilderness medicine, and this is the Wilderness Medical Society, and it's been around for several decades. Many EM physicians were actually part of the founding group, but there are grants out there. Look, this is not life-changing, but this is money out there. So again, the students out there, I will tell you this Charles S. Houston grant, this is for medical students. This actually even often goes unfunded because there just are not a lot of students putting in for some of the challenging reasons that I mentioned before, mentorship and opportunities. I'd say as a faculty member or as a resident, make some friends with some medical students and make them the PI on these projects and put them in because you can get this funding. Right, and what's unique to these grants, which isn't an opportunity in a lot of other grants, is that they will help fund your travel. So a lot of grants will exclude travel costs. This will actually go, if you need travel costs, you go do research somewhere for $1,500. That's not an exclusion. Research and training grants for residents and fellows. This is on the more competitive side because this fits a lot of people in this pool. So again, make friends with medical students, and you can go for the Houston grant. The Hulk grant is for WMS members. Membership's pretty cheap. Even as a faculty member, it's under $200 for the year. You can actually get a lifetime membership for about $2,000 if that's an interest. But as a med student, it's like $50. It's really pretty minimal. So to become a member in order to attain a potential for a $10,000 grant is pretty easy to do. The Hackett Auerbach grant, obviously Paul Auerbach from Emergency Medicine at Stanford, they have a Young Investigator grant that they fund every year, and this is for people who are really motivated into research that's really part of wilderness medicine. And good. And then there are these adventure travel grants. These don't get filled very much. WMS has a lot of CME programs, and if you're willing to go and conduct a research project during the CME program, you can actually get grant funding for that. But I have not seen that actually filled very much. So other funding opportunities, I just advise you to kind of go out to your institutions. There's opportunity for private grants out there. There's crowdsourcing, experiment.com, and even some other groups. You can actually put the project you want to put down, send an email out to your friends or colleagues, or even just regular folks control research projects that are looking for funding, and private individuals can fund your grants, much in the same way of GoFundMe or some of these other sites. So if you need $1,500 to fund your travel to go do research somewhere, you might have an opportunity to find it in the community of scientists that you're around. Industry sponsorship is a thing. So a lot of the tools that we use, not so much necessarily here in the desert, but you don't go too far away and you're in alpine country and avalanche country. Black Diamond, can fund you for research related to avalanche disasters and things like that. So there's industry sponsorship available. hospital foundations, you'd be surprised what you could find as med students. There often, and as residents, there's often GME grants that are available through your institutions. Seed money from your department chair, Department of Defense, government contracts. For faculty, this may seem hard-pressed, but a way to kind of tangentially do this is if you do a short term with like remote medicine, which is an organization, they often have government grants, and this is a way to actually get funding for something that you may want to do. And med hacks are not-for-profits, so just kind of thinking outside the box, you might be able to obtain some funding. All right, great, thank you very much.
All right, so, oops, I think I'm on the, yeah, it's my page. So we're going to talk about how do you find somebody that wants to be a learner, right? So everyone here is a learner. You're here at a conference, you're trying to learn things. So we have a couple of medical students, we have a couple of residents, and a couple of faculty, right? So our newer people that came in, we had already identified. So residents in the back. Okay, great. Cool. So I explained yesterday, medical students are like golden retrievers, right? They're just excited. And I'm not saying that derogatory. I have a golden retriever at home. They're like super awesome, but they need direction, right? They're just excited. They want to do this. They want to get in there. And all the residents start out as golden retrievers. Then you end up as being like kind of like that surly dog at the park with one eye that you can't really pet all the time, right? And like, all right, just leave me alone, Particularly after a stretch of night shifts, you're like, yeah, So you make that transition during residency. So try not to lose that. Try to still be a golden retriever a little bit, but like be more like a service animal, right? You're doing a job. You're helping people out, right? So you're actually becoming more valuable, but have that energy. And I say that because medical students are a great source of energy. That's why a lot of us are involved in academic emergency medicine, because we get to be with medical students and residents who are constantly pushing us and challenging us to try and learn new things and stay current. It's easy to go into the community and retire on active duty where you're just kind of like, yep, I don't care. They're 8 years old. Yep, troponin, dimer, done, absolute chest pain. CT, oh my God, got to scan everybody, or tapping. I don't care. They're 16, tap them, whatever. It's like, so things change, practice change. And so you want to stay current. You want to be a learner. So how do you get people involved in research, right? So who here, seriously, true show of hands, who likes to do research? Like really likes to do research. Like you're like, absolutely, man. I go to bed at night thinking about how I'm going to get this R01 or K1 or K2 or whatever. Oh, that's the other stuff people get, right? But no, seriously, like who really gets fired up about research? Most of us don't, right? We're in the other rooms. Those folks are in the other rooms. They're in the big hall this morning giving the talk to everybody, right? But you all have questions about things that you think about clinically, right? That's research. That's all research is. Except they blow it up and try to talk about it, and talk about how important it is and talk about how the other people don't really get what they're talking about. It's like you just had a question. If you have a question about something, how can you fix it? Wilderness medicine research can be really simple or it can be super involved. It can be laboratory stuff, it can be bench stuff, it can be doing stuff, sampling pond water, after a hurricane like Jay has done. It can be doing surveys after, at events, doing race support and providing surveys. It could be stuff like on the side of, mountains like Stuart does. There's a lot of cool things you can do. You're just asking a question. So how do you get people to go do those things for you and do that research? Because a lot of us have full-time jobs and we can't just go do research all the time. And we're not going to get a lot of funding like Jay is talking about. Those $5,000 grants are not going to pay for the research assistants that support all these big funds that they're able to talk in the big rooms about all the chest pain studies and the stroke studies and the all these scans and siren systems and centers and multi-system groups that put together things where they've got a research coordinator coming over. Can you fill out this form? Can you fill out this form? Can you click this heart pathway? Can you do this? Can you do that? All this crap that adds unnecessary work to you. It makes you that surly one-eyed dog, right? And it's not answering your question. You don't really care about the question they're asking. So how do you get people involved in answering the questions you want answered, right? So honestly, medical students are a great opportunity. And residents are another opportunity. And, undergrads. And even old faculty. Sometimes we actually are able to do stuff. We can go out and do things occasionally. You've got to make sure we're close to trails and close to bathrooms and stuff like that, But there's a point where we're like, okay, we can function well without Wi-Fi, most of us. But, you know, get people excited about things. Just have a question. You know, there's one of the things about this, we want people to connect with other people. Wilderness medicine is such a small section of a broad field because we do things that all other specialties do. We just do it wherever we can. You know, it's emergency medicine in its pure form. We can practice anywhere. And research is a big part of that. We just haven't really emphasized that a lot because we think about research in the classic terms, and we need to think of it in the terms of what are the questions that we need to think about that we're interested in, and that can have an impact in our practice of wilderness medicine, right? And then how do you go about getting people to do that? Well, get the medical students. Go do a lunch talk for your medical students. You know, talk to your residents about it. If you're faculty, talk to your faculty members about it. Go to the undergrad community and talk to the outdoor rec people. You know, we're doing a talk at our local brewery next week, and we're calling it Beers and Band-Aids. And we're doing it, we have 200 people signed up for a free community first aid workshop, and we're doing like a survey with it. So we're doing research with it to see if they can retain basic novel skill teaching. So you can do things like that. But you can get people involved. We're going to get the med students and some of the undergrads are going to do surveys for us and do some of those things. So you can get people engaged and excited about this. You just have to be a little excited about it. So it's super easy. So again, that golden retriever will go pick up that ball all the time. You just got to keep throwing that ball. Okay? So that's your job, is to throw the ball, right, in the direction you want the dog to go. Okay? So think about how you can do that. And this is no disrespect at all to medical students or golden retrievers. We love them both. But there will be a time for discussion afterwards and questions after this. But I really just wanted to get those things out there for you. There's a million people out there that have questions like you do, and you just have to engage them and get them excited about trying to answer those questions and come at it in a novel way. We can be non-traditional. That's what wilderness medicine does, more so than the standard, we have to go down this algorithm, this pathway, right? That's the beauty of this, and that's why a lot of us do wilderness medicine as opposed to cardiovascular research like everyone else in my department, right? Like everybody's got a heart, it's totally fine. But think about this and think about ways you can identify people that would be interested, and they're not always people that you think about. Just put it out there, all right? So next up, I think we have Hillary.
All right, and last we're going to talk about the learners and how to get involved in different projects. So first of all, you want to, one of the hardest things is trying to find projects to get involved in that match your interests, your skills, and your time availability. So it's important to define your interests, to kind of decide whether or not this is something that you want to do kind of long term, or whether you want to do it for a short amount of time as a trial, as if you even want to do research. A lot of, especially early on, you may not even know whether you want to do research or what it's all about. You may decide that you want to pursue a specific question, something that you're interested in, or whether you want to try to get preliminary data to apply for one of those grants, or to apply to a particular program or to a project. This might be something that you need to do to fill a requirement for a class, for residency, for some type of program. So knowing what you actually want to get out of the experience is important. And then how do you find the right project? There's a lot of things out there, and you need to know whether or not you're looking for basic science. Do you want to be in a lab, or do you want to do something that's more clinical? Do you want to travel? And if you do, where do you want that travel to be? Do you want it to be domestic? Do you want it to be international? And whether you want to stay at home, and what those commitments are going to look like. And whether you have this dedicated time where you have a rotation, an elective perhaps, as a student or a resident, you have a specific time that you have available for that, or whether you want to do it a little bit as a time when you have that over the course of months or years. If you do have a dedicated rotation, you need to know the restraints and what kind of paperwork is involved for that. And then once you actually find someone who has an option, you want to ask some questions before you actually commit to this, knowing what the conditions are going to be like. Are you going to be sleeping under mosquito nets on a barge for a month? Or are you going to sleep in a -20 sleeping bag with a yak dung stove? You probably want to know about those things ahead of time before you get into it. And You may not, you probably won't know everything before you go on one of these trips, especially if it's something international, but it's helpful to have some idea what you're getting into. How long are you going to be gone? How flexible is that timing? And what are the costs involved? Are you expected to provide gear? Are you supposed to have your own airfare? And do you need to apply for some of this funding to get that before you start? And as far as that funding goes, sometimes your program, your school, or your residency actually can provide some funding as well. A lot of different programs have options out there where you just have to look internally to see if there's options for some of those travel grants and the like. So one other way that you can really get involved is to make yourself marketable in some way. Do you have a skill that you can offer, that you can bring to the table to offer as that? Do you know how to ultrasound? Do you know how to do some type of computer or programming? I had a student that came and said he wanted to do something with me, and I'm like, well, you know what? I really need to have an app coded on an iPhone, and I have no idea how to do that. He's like, oh, I'll learn. And so now he went and he coded an app. And that was actually very helpful because I had no idea how to do it. Do you know how to draw blood? Do you know how to do something that's going to make you more marketable to a project? And what kind of time do you have available? Again, do you have that dedicated rotation? Or is this, going to be something that you're going to do on your summer? And again, look internally because there's a lot of summer projects and summer funding out there for particular programs, maybe within your own institution or another institution. And then lastly, make your interests known. Walk up to people and say, I'm really interested in doing something. What do you have available? We get emails, all of us up here get emails all the time. It's like, hey, I'm interested in doing something. Do you have any projects that are available? Do you have any ideas? Or I want to do this. Do you have the ability to help me? Can you connect me to somebody? And ask around and keep asking. Because if we don't know how to do it, and there's probably somebody who does, so ask, at home. And again, this is a small community, particularly in wilderness medicine. And pretty much, everybody kind of knows everybody else. So if you're interested in something particular, keep asking. Come to national organizations, get involved in SAEM and the interest group. There's a meeting tomorrow morning. Come. There's a subsection. There's actually within EMRA and within RAMS, they have sections there that have wilderness medicine that you can get involved in, and WMS, as was mentioned before, you can join for really not much money and be a part of that. And then, come to national meetings like this and meet people. So, all right. For the next few minutes, we're going to take some questions and see if anybody has any questions about what we've talked about. And then after that, we're going to do some networking. So, any questions out there?
Hi, I'm a Labrador. So one thing that I kind of face when I'm trying to go get more active in wilderness medicine is to try and get that person to throw that ball. What are some things that students need to do to try and, get doctors or mentors to try and help push for that? Like I continuously will send them an email or ask, and I ask the right people, but sometimes it feels like you get stonewalled. We're trying to get more into the wilderness.
That'd be happy with that. Yeah, no, bless you for your question. It is a good question, and it's funny, up on our website, up until about 3 weeks ago, I had a blurb on there, it's been there for 10 plus years, saying, we value long-term relationships, get in touch early. Some of the best people we've had have been people who were EMTs when they reached out to me way before med school. And things have just gotten so crazy, it's just like, we need to just cut that part out, just because I can't field all the emails and I feel badly. And so while I'm not publicly encouraging, the ability of, and I was just complimenting another med student yesterday, who has done a beautiful job of being persistent and making his desires known, but being respectful that there are a finite number of minutes in a day. And so I think it's a hard line to walk as a human being and as a professional, but it's something that kind of, if you can manifest your interest, your sincere desire, there isn't anybody's ego that won't be stroked enough to at some point say, okay, yeah, no, let me throw you a bone or a ball or whatever else. And so you strike me as entirely capable of reaching out and doing what needs to be done, but it is that kind of mix of kind of persistence and willingness to cut people a little bit of slack.
So I think another thing, and Hillary brought up a great point. If you have something to bring to the table, you're just eager, you want to help out, you want to do things, that's great. But have a skill set or say, what do you need to be done? Familiarize yourself with that person a little bit, because most of their life is going to be online somehow, and you can see what research they've done, what project they've done, what their interests are, and you can talk about how that dovetails with things you're interested in. Find out if there's someone else that knows that person, someone at your institution. If you have a faculty member who can reach out for you, that's another way to do it. Have someone locally who can reach out, who can just text us and say, hey, I've got this student here who really wants to work with you. What can we do? And any of us would respond to that. I mean, we text all the time. So things like that where we're in communication all the time with each other, and it's not so much with everyone else sometimes. The unwashed masses sometimes can't get through, right? But
unless you come to our ED, and then you're welcome.
Yeah, then you're welcome with open arms, right? So I wouldn't recommend trying to be a patient to get the ball thrown, but doing that, so making those connections is a good way to sort of make that first connection with that. What else? So all the residents have to do a scholarly project. Like, why not do a wilderness project? Right? I mean, when you think about what you want to do, hey, why not do something fun where you go outside, do part of your elective where you're doing a wilderness elective and you're collecting data, or you're doing something fun like that, instead of, hey, we're gonna reorganize the handout sheets for the dental clinics in the area, or whatever. We had someone do that as their scholarly project. I mean, like, that's great, it's helpful, but yeah, I'd rather go out and talk about injuries in mountain bike events or something. But think about that. If you have the opportunity to do an elective, work that in, and you can always do a research project with that. There's a lot of easy ways to do that. If anyone needs, sort of remote mentoring, those of us up here happy to help out with that. Reach out to us. We can kind of give you some guidance on those things. It's a whole lot easier if you have a little bit of help from someone externally sometimes, and then we can even point you into people at your school or at your program that you may not even be aware of that are doing wilderness medicine, and some of them may not even be in your department. That's the best part of wilderness medicine, is you may actually be able to collaborate with folks who are not in emergency medicine. You can talk to the ID folks, you can talk to the pulmonary folks, you can talk to the peds people do a lot, family medicine they do a lot. There's a lot of different specialties that you can get some exposure and experience and opportunity with, and we know a lot of those folks because it is a small community. And so sort of making that inroads and making that sort of like connection of like, hey, how do I get involved? And that subtle persistence of like, I want my $2. I want my $2. I want my $2, right? Those of you who haven't seen Better Off Dead, please go rent it.
Yeah, no, there's a giant hole in your education.
That's right. But there's a point where you do have to be a little bit, hey, I'm here, I'm not going to quit. I'm ready to go. And again, the dog keeps bringing you the ball. You're going to throw it eventually. Even if you're just frustrated, you're going to throw it. So, you want to stop just shy of that point. And we can help you with that.
And I think, and also being willing to, I think some people put wilderness medicine, they draw overly tight boundaries against it. And one of the joys and I think great strengths of wilderness medicine, as I see it, is that it is boundless. So we do, a lot of our work is ultrasound based. We do a lot of work, as Henderson was saying, with cardiology, with anesthesia, with neurology, with surgery. So you got a range of different options. Climate change and human health, there's a huge push that's growing beautifully within SAEM and more broadly to just recognize that the core of human health in the emergency department and for our populations is based on a healthy, successful biosphere. And so that awareness is figuring in as an area ripe for growth. And then things like discrete physiologies with altitude, with dive medicine, the disaster team, both internationally in Japan and internally at MGH, has been hugely receptive and wants us to be involved. So don't kind of be willing to let your mind recognize the breadth of things that you can be curious about and can uniquely address with wilderness medicine that other people are going to find valuable. One of the more fun things in the last like 5 years is a lot more people are reaching out to us than vice versa. And so it's just, I guess, I'm learning from my mother. Be persistent and just, keep plugging along and doing what you find interesting, and the rest of the world will catch up with you.
I think the other opportunity that we can't think about, we talk a lot about remote medicine and going somewhere, but it's emergency medicine. So there's a lot of illnesses of the environment that come to us, right? Everything comes. So if you think about not having really to travel, think about the things that are occurring around you. You notice an uptake in heat illness in your department in the summer. Do you have frostbite injuries in the winter? Do you have cold illness in the winter? Do you have sporting events with injuries? For example, I worked in Queens, New York, so totally urban. Remember, we had the first Spartan race in Citi Field there, if you're a Mets fan, and it was a terrible day. I transitioned from the department, but that would have been an easy project to actually catalog injuries from a Spartan race because we were the receiving hospital. So maybe think a little differently as we talk about wilderness. We're thinking about outside, and it is outside. But think about how that relates to emergency medicine, because that's fundamentally at the core of what we are. So the opportunities for you to participate and even think about and engage in research are things that are there at your fingertips, where you might not need a Dr. Harris. You might need a mentor in your emergency department who is willing to partner with you with this. So that's just commentary.
Any other questions? No. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come off the stage and we're going to come down here. And if there's any other faculty members that want to come and join us, and we're just going to, let any of the learners that want to come talk to us or anybody else, and see if we can make some pairings or give you some individual advice on how to get started in a project, and maybe we'll make some connections today.
And just to be clear, sometimes it's hard at meetings like this, but any one of us is my earlier statement notwithstanding, we're readily available. In being here today, you've made clear that this isn't an idle interest, and if you have a question that comes about after you leave here, or you just don't want to ask it today and you want to do it quietly some other time, that's completely cool, and you can reach out to us.